Now going to host a bit of discussion. Now, I'm not. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of minutes. I'm just going to introduce some people. We're going to talk about this intersection between sport, technology, and innovation, and how it links to the SDGs and how it links to sustainability. A really interesting discussion. I'm going to welcome now for the moment, we've got a panelist on the way. It's a big event, the Web Summit, 17,000 people. It takes time for people to find each other. So please welcome, can I have Ben Christian, who's head of the UN partnerships at SAP and innovation. Can Ben please join me? Have we got Ben here? No, Ben's disappeared as well. He's finding her. Okay, so we're going to start. I'm going to have a chat with Jessie Lovejoy, who's director of 49ers Edu, and has been a leader in the field around STEM education and sports role. Hi, Jessie. How are you?
Greetings, Nick.
I'm loving the fact that I'm standing and you're still taller than me.
I'll leave that one right where you left.
Okay. How are you doing? How are you finding Web
well.
Summit? How are you finding Web Summit?
It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, no, it's pretty remarkable to see such a gathering. Okay, so we're going to just welcome now our other panelists. Can we have Ben join us, Ben Christian from SAP, who handles the UN partnership. And we've got Aisha with us as well, who's head of knowledge and innovation at Barcelona FC. Hi, Aisha, how are you? Welcome. Let's get a microphone for you.
Is she right here? Oh, you need a
There you go,
microphone.
you need a mic.
You will be sitting down.
Okay,
No.
do you want to come and sit down?
This is
Come
your
sit
seat.
here. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm all right standing. I'm short. How are you doing? Why don't you catch your breath, Aisha, and I'll have a quick chat with Jessie. So, Jessie, you're out there with the 49ers on the West Coast, one of the centers of innovation in the world. How have the 49ers seized on that opportunity of that community? Because, you know, you're in Santa Clara, probably about an hour and a half outside San Fran itself. How, when you moved to that stadium 4 or 5 years ago, did you seize the opportunity?
Yeah, so thank you. The York family that owns the San Francisco 49ers has been doing work to support the educational ecosystem in the Bay Area for the better part of 30 years. And when the stadium, when the proposition passed and the funding was secured, they made a decision to move into an area that no sports teams have gone, which is direct service education. That's what I do, right? So the idea was, we know that kids see sport as a conduit, as a way to develop themselves academically, physically. And so we decided to create different ways to engage kids using the game of football and expose them to science, technology, engineering, art, and math. You know, give them pathways to turn that interest into perseverance and mastery. And, you know, being in Silicon Valley, of course, it's supportive to that, right? But I think separate from the locale, it's more about the approach, because it works anywhere. You know, we've done work with Benfica. I'm going to go see them tomorrow. We've done work with Chelsea Football Club. We've done work in Fiji. We've done work all looking at sport as a platform. And we know that, and you spoke about this when you were up here just a minute ago with Dan, we know that sport provides children, especially marginalized children, an opportunity to engage further in the kinds of things that they may find difficult or challenging.
And I suppose bridging the interest gap, as you can call it, is such a fundamental part of things. How, once you've bridged that gap, how are you bridging that gap as they come into the stadium, as they come into, because you've had about 100,000 kids through or so, which is pretty staggering into this one-day program. How do you make it so engaging? And I think I've got a follow-up question, but how do you make it so engaging?
Yeah, well, we actually will have, in a couple months, we'll cross the 300,000 student threshold, and since we opened the program in 2014. And the most important way to ensure that you engage kids is to work with their teachers, align with state and national standards on the education side, and then use the most compelling parts of your game, and in our case, the stadium. You know, Levi Stadium is a very cool place. I look at it as one of the world's largest classrooms, and we treat it that way. You know, so we are a LEED Gold building. We are, you know, one of the most technology-forward outdoor venues that you ever find. So it's about being very intentional about what we know will motivate kids. So, you know, it's a 5-hour experience in terms of the field trip program. We also do a number of other programs. but it's about thinking about what are those 5 hours going to be. How are you going to get a through line that attaches to something that's really important to them and also to us? So just a quick example might be solar energy, right? So solar energy on its face doesn't seem like a sports subject. But when you think about the fact that Levi Stadium is net neutral to the grid in Santa Clara because we are contributing as much electricity as we're using via the solar technology in the building, all of a sudden that's a sports store. We talk about how that allows us to turn the lights on for the games, turn them off, and not be a negative contributor to our environment, right? So, and that one piece of curriculum that we have would be something that would manifest into a stadium tour that focuses on showing them where the solar panels are, an in-class lesson that allows them to construct a solar robot using a PV cell, and a series of other things that we'll expose them to.
Amazing. And Aisha, one of the biggest brands, a different type of football, soccer, over at FC Barcelona. How do you engage and use the brand around education, and how are you central to that?
So we do it in two ways. The first one is through our programs. For us, it is very important to work with children. We work with children in many countries, in almost 58 countries. And what we do is work with them for 9 months in a row. So what we do is engage the children because of the brand. So the brand attracts a lot. But we did a research, and we find out that the children came because of the attraction brand, but they stay because of the program, because the program gives them contributes to make them happier, healthier, and so on. So for us, education is very important. You see, Aristotle said a long time ago, we are here talking about the future, but I'm going to talk about what a philosopher said centuries ago. He said that the difference between a person educated and a person non-educated is like the difference between a person alive and a dead person. So in many countries, this actually it's real, because there are a huge difference between the people who is educated and their life expectancy. It's more than 10 years from those who are not educated. So for us, the cross-cutting issue in all the programs we are doing is education. So we educate in values, we use tools to promote education. We work with the schools and after-school activities. So in many ways, education is all over our programs. And in the different programs we do, it doesn't matter if it's a program about healthy habits or if it's a program about social inclusion. We use education as a way to get children attracted. And this is in terms of programs, but we also use the brand in terms of campaigns, because Barca brand goes everywhere. So we try to attract people for the good causes because of the brand.
Excellent. Ben, I don't want to leave you out on your own here, because I know you don't run a major sports team. I'm sorry about that. So Ben, as SAP have really got this huge investment, a very strong sense of purpose, how it links into the SDGs. So education obviously is a crucial thing for you, and thinking about the next generation of these guys is something of fundamental importance for you.
Absolutely. At SAP, we see ourselves as an opportunity, not just as a tech platform, but one of the world's largest communities, given the scale and reach of all of our industries. And nothing really has the power of uniting capacity that sports has to galvanize communities towards a purpose. As you know well, and you all know very well, these narratives, we're in the economy of time and attention that we see ourselves in 2019. And in this next decade, it'll be even more important to say, what are the things that bring people together the most? They come around sports activities, they come around football clubs, they come around these. How can we use, yes, analytics or opportunities to create those narratives? SAP as a technology platform is very important, but our University Alliances network, our higher education network, our secondary education network, we're all about helping create and packaging education tools to promote not just technology skills, but literacy in the global goals, the things which are behind us. Because those are the things which are worth uniting about. And when we talk about sports, we talk about winners. And we only win if we do it together, in this case. Either we all win or we all lose when it comes to the global goals. So,
And your partnership is so crucial at the moment. It is great to see a brand that is doing so much and investing so much into sport and social change rather than just sport. It's of huge importance. So when we've brought the kids in and we've used our brand, we've got them in, we've put them through some programming. How are we changing outcomes beyond that? How are we getting them into education or getting them into employment next? I think that's quite an important question, because we can have that day-long activity, but what happens afterwards is fundamental. So what I'd be really interested from you guys is understanding what comes next, and how do we track and keep informed so we know that we're doing something of real legacy and impact. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I think the most important part of that is thinking about it. If we want to talk about it from a business standpoint, thinking about your portfolio of products, and in our case, 49ers EDU, we have a teacher training program that runs once a month that takes our curriculum and brings teachers in and teaches them how to implement similar things so that they can do that at scale.
We forget
right?
the teachers are bored.
Right.
Well,
I mean, if your goal is to reach children, you have to reach teachers and you have to reach parents, right? And you have to do that in a way that's relevant to all the different audiences which have unique needs. The other thing is, a program like the 49ers STEM Leadership Institute, which is another program we run, which is a 6-year-long program. It cohorts kids in 7th grade, 67th graders. They stay together until they're done with 12th grade. They take all their science and math classes together, and then they do 300 hours of extracurricular instruction, all with the goal of building up certain key values that we've identified that will allow them to succeed in the future. And then when you're doing the things that might be a day, they might be a week, they might be a month, they might be 6 years, you need really smart and incisive exposure to career opportunity. And you need to align that to educational achievement. So it's not enough to stand up and say, here's Nick Keller, the founder of Beyond Sport, he played sports, here's how we got here. Here's the things that he was interested in when he was in middle school. And here's how that manifests into high school, and the choice that he made when he went to college, and the skills that he developed in internships or whatever it is to put him in a position to get that job, right? And that is the part that, especially for kids kids that are furthest from resource and opportunity, that they have the least exposure to, is what's my path? And yes, we do need ways to get them engaged, and to your point, but it's only effective insofar as you have a way to move them along that paradigm.
It's like lighting a fire in a way. You get a spark and you've got to keep working. Is that your experience, Aisha?
From our side, it is very important to work with the community, and not the trainers, the parents. They are very important. We do training of parents regarding the activities we do. And of course, the trainers, it's huge. There are other investigations that says it is very important, the role of the trainers in the program with the children. And also regarding how to be impactful on these programs in the future, it is very important to try to make programs that empower children. So it's about giving them the tools to decide to have a critical opinion about what is happening in their environment, in their context, why the world is so unequal, for example, in the context they're living.
Sorry, go on, Ben.
And to support this, from an SAP perspective, our mission is to help leverage SAP's global network and in these local communities with organizations like Beyond Sport, with these incredible teams and organizations that you represent, to help build those connections and to foster those programs which are going. So we see as a network multiplier, as a partnership. That's what we believe is our role.
And the thing is, and I say this, I don't think controversially, but when we think about innovation and the importance of diversity of thought and diversity of background, diversity of thought, I'm looking around and I've never seen such a lack of diversity amongst 17,000 people. And for me, it presents one of the biggest challenges that we have is around ensuring that we're reducing inequalities around STEM. And there's some hard set figures that there might be equal amounts of women going into study STEM subjects, but there's a 45% dropout higher than men. And so as I look around here today, I was walking here thinking, oh my God, this is probably one of the most least diverse groups and conferences I've ever been to. How do we face that challenge? Because STEM education and education is not just one simple problem. it's several problems together. How are you guys challenging that and really making sure that we can do something about it? Ben, you're bursting with energy.
I'm bursting right now because I think this is incredibly important. There is statistics. When you educate a girl, you influence a community. There's these opportunities, and we're in the business of building communities and things for sustainable. And tech is extremely dangerous in the sense that if we lack diversity in technology and in this industry, it implicates all of those biases, which are then scaled out and adopted. So we find it very careful. We team up with organizations like the Female Quotient. We team up with organizations that are actively promoting and empowering women's and diverse entrepreneurship, as well as leadership in executive education and things like this.
And so how do we work with the underserved in the community? I think that's a really important piece for teams.
In our case, we include them in all our activities, and we adapt the activities. It's not the same to having a child with a disability that having a child without a disability. So the activities has to be able to adapt to the different kind of children that comes to them. And also try to communicate all of them that they are the same, even if they are different. Okay, so that's.
But I suppose we've got to start actively working to really make a difference, rather than, I suppose, unifying is important. But how do we really just change because the problem is if you've got inequalities, and as we move into this time of excessive technology, how are we going to really make sure it is for everyone, not just the people that are already there?
I think, it may sound basic, but the first thing that we had to do was realize if we just run our programs without being intentional about how we're going to recruit and serve communities that can't get to us, we will fail to achieve that objective, right? So the first part is, okay, what are the barriers to entry? Is it transportation money? Is it not having the right social networks and just exposure to understand that this is an opportunity?
Even knowing where it's
to have 40 kids in your class versus 20 kids in your class if you're a teacher in a low-income area versus one that's not. And so how do I reach that teacher with a different message? So the first part is diagnose that, solve for those problems, right? In our case, put $1 million a year into subsidizing transportation for schools that can't afford it, right? That's something that we did intentionally because we knew that if we didn't do that, kids wouldn't get to us. And there are other things. But to your bigger question, I think as relatively woke organizations, right, we have to hold our partners and the folks that we work with increasingly accountable in the ways that are appropriate, and encourage the same level of thought and care in accomplishing that objective. Because that's where you have power, right, as Barca, as the 49ers, as SAP, and the power of presence and the power of leadership in our categories. And so the more that we can bring that to the folks that we work with, I think the more change we might be able to affect globally.
And I think that's increasingly the case, that it also works the other way. These major sponsors who are part of the SDG kind of community driving forward around global governance because they have to, whether it be by regulation or consumer demand, they're going to be looking at their sponsorships quite carefully and going, okay, how can we shift the dial? Because if you want to partner with a rights holder, team, league, I think there's going to be a bit of a shift coming and a push on sport that the traditional model is long gone. Do you feel that, Ben?
I think that's very important, actually. We're in a time where we actually can't afford to not have this mindset. We can't just keep running or building our business or our leagues for business sake, for optimizing for next quarter or certain viewership. It needs to have that very specific. It's enough to have some people who are woke, right? No, we need to actually make sure that we're educating each other as trainers and as mentors to build mentors, not just to build. Yeah.
Well, you guys are a perfect example of teams that really understand the model and have done great works, and you're not only pulling your community together, but drawing corporates into your conversation as well.
Good, Nico.
So from our point of view, it is important it's about the 17th SDG. So it's about finding those partners that add value to your program, to your ideas, to your mission.
Very specific and choosy on your partners.
And being lucky enough to have ownership and leadership in the organization that embraces that. And that's where you find the rub a lot of times, is you may have an organization at a certain level ready to adopt and move there, but we need to increasingly bubble that up to the folks that are making the high-level decisions across the board. To your point about sponsorships, I'll tell a quick story about Chevron, and it's not a plug for them, although it is, and they support our work. They had been interested in a relationship with the 49ers for years, but had been very intentional about saying, we don't want signage, we don't want the suites, we don't want to do the sales thing. We want something that has an organic touch point with the community. And when we created 49ers EDU, it was a very natural flowing conversation with them because they wanted something that wasn't about, checking a particular box for them. And it's been 6 years now, and they've evolved and iterated with us, and we need more companies like SAP, we need more companies like Chevron, we need more companies that are going to sit at the table and say, yes, there may be certain things that we need in terms of our relationship with you, but here's what we want, right? And here's what's important to us in terms of outcome. And that's this connection and support of stuff like this.
So last question, because we're running out of time a little bit. Just quickly, give me a snapshot on where you think in 5 years' time, what are your relationships going to be like with the private sector around the SDGs? What's your dream vision in a quick snapshot of where you'd like to be? And then we'll ask you about your dream partnership as well. Yes. Go ahead, Aisha.
So it's finding the mission with specific private sector companies or organizations, and to develop this mission in a specific program. So I think we all have, right now, in this moment, talking about climate change and the situation in the world right now of inequalities and so on, we all have a responsibility. So it's a matter of finding which responsibility is shared and to start working.
Are we going to push the SDGs forward?
Yeah, to take an aspirational tone to it, I think what I would love to see is to have all the organizations that ultimately work with the team, that take the same approach that SAP, Chevron, and a couple others do, Levi's being one, and say, okay, for whatever a percentage of every deal that we do with the team is going to go specifically to causes that we can connect to, tie back to something like the SDGs, and then drive that forward as part of our relationship. So I think that would continue to get more organizations thinking about the fact that these things are important, and it would also do the really important work of driving more funds where they're needed, to support the work. So I think that's from an aspirational sense. But one of the things that I know that the 49ers are committed to, it's why I'm here, is helping other sports teams, leagues, entities understand their opportunities specific to education, and the fact that they can be that same supporting mechanism for teachers and students and parents in their community.
And in a week or so time, we're at Beyond Innovation over in LA together with you guys are partners of, doing exactly that, drawing together the teams and leagues to see what we can do around that. Final word, Ben.
Real quick, 5 years from now, 2025 I'll call it, sustainability and diversity becomes a normality built into the business models of not just the corporations, but these access to this incredible programs that are being run. Now there's more access. All 8 billion people, I'll call it all 8 billion people on the planet at that time, rounding up, will have access. The connectivity to the internet will have improved such that we will actually have the opportunities to better connect to these opportunities, and that will enable more of our global mind, as I like to call it, if we're all engaged, to actually access and educate and use and participate in the conversation, which will accelerate us forward.
And use the internet now for social good rather than shopping.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll finish on that note. Thank you very much. Huge round of applause, Aisha, for Jesse and Ben. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you to all of you out there
Thanks,
that
Nick.
watched, and we'll see you soon.